Welcome back to CrimsonCast. Galen Clavia, Scott Caulfield joining you once again. If you're now wondering why isn't Galen talking over the intro music like he used to on these beginnings, for those of you who are listening on Apple or just listening on Spotify, we actually cut a promo reel that we are using to start the video with the theme music. I love the theme music, Scott. It doesn't get its due. Thought we'd let the full thing play out, but that's why I'm not talking over it, because there are images that are going with it. And also, I will probably screw up the tech if I try to talk over it at this point.
Good to see you, man, by the way. The intro music, I think we've done this years ago, but I'll do it really quick, get back into it. And we were starting the podcast. And once we kind of got going, it's like, we need to have a theme song. It's like a year in or so. And I think it was a set of like music on iTunes that was copyright, like, free download, but it was from IU. Like somehow, like it was somebody at IU made it. I lost the name to history, but it's out there. Like if you made that music, my God, come on the podcast. Like shoot us an email. We'd love to have you on. It went from being like, all right, this is a good placeholder. Like this until we find something better. And then after a while, it's like, I liked it. And then like 6 years in, I'm like, God, we can find something better. And now it's like iconic. Like now it is, Mariano Rivera entering to Enter Sandman. Like now I like it. And it is, probably if there was like an audio version of our funeral, like that would be played.
I know. And
the somber CrimsonCast,
like the Fox injury theme, like where they yeah, it's like that one. Yeah, where they
do it slow, but they're like, oh, we're going to break now.
Scott's ripped a vocal cord. We'll be back after these messages. We need Pat Summerall from the video game. I don't believe it.
They have the ambulance drive onto the field and hit like 12 players. Yeah,
it's a great theme. It's called. I have the name of the theme.
Fully throttled or something.
Fully charged. But as you said, it was part of a package of essentially like royalty-free music that was on an IU website designed by a student. And I had the information at one point, and this was one of the things that was lost to the Egyptian hackers. One of the many stories we've got from the history of the pod. And so yes, if we can find the individual who made the podcast theme, I would love to talk with them. And it's been such from the beginning, like from your wife doing reads over the top of it, live from his couch, Scott. Yes, like this is some old like Rosetta Stone CrimsonCast stuff that we're talking about here. So
yeah.
Anyway, good to talk to you folks.
Good to see you.
We are ready to talk some more IU football as the season continues to approach faster and faster. We got a lot to talk about. We got a couple of your questions that we're still going to hit. Not all of them. We had some questions on facilities-related items. We're waiting on some word back in finality about what all to expect on the facilities front. So we're going to hold those questions. But we had a lot of things to talk about in terms of what the heck's going on with the rankings, where Indiana's at, all that fun stuff. So all of those things and more coming up in just a second. But first of all, wanted to remind you folks that we are part of the Back Home Network, and you can find all the Back Home Network shows on YouTube, including Assembly Call, which is going to be, if you're listening immediately after this is released, we will be going live at 9 o'clock Eastern to talk about the first IU basketball game in Puerto Rico, which nobody can see, but we're going to divine information out of that. That's coming up relatively soon. We've also got in the roster of shows, of course, the Doing the Work podcast, which covers IU women's basketball. We've got Dribble Drive, which is Austin Render talking about Big Ten women's basketball in general. We've got some new shows that we launched, Sideline Stories with Trisha Whitaker and Sydney Parrish. That one they had Joe Buck on earlier today in their most recent release. Great interview. I recommend checking it out. Joe's always a great guest. And, of course, we're also launching The Big Red Carpet with Rhett Lewis. That's coming up this football season. We've also got Bison Chat coming back. All of these on the Back Home Network. And all of them brought to you by Home Field Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. And, Scott, I told the people, you'll recall, that there was going to be some stuff coming that they would want to pay attention to with Home Field Apparel. And as it turns out, Scott, I was correct.
You could say that every month, though. I mean, honestly, like every month they're releasing new stuff. But yes, they have the mystery boxes, right?
Well, it's the Platinum Football Box.
Right.
And there were several of these that were released for various teams across the country, and Indiana gets one. And for those of you who are watching along, you can see what's in the Platinum Football box.
Home field is really keeping the oval alive. And I mean that in a positive way. Like it's the only place you can get oval gear.
What I find fascinating in a great way about this box is that it has oval and it has bison.
Yeah.
And you'll notice it does not have, unless they're on the socks, and they might be on the socks because there are socks in this, it doesn't have the skinny pitchfork, but it does have the drop shadow pitchfork, which is my personal favorite, on the hat. So in this box, you get an Indiana football hoodie with the oval, not just the logo of the oval on the front, but you get the helmet on the back. You get a bison shirt celebrating the launch of Hoosier the Bison. You get a really cool retro-looking crew neck with an angry guy from the 1940s, it looks like, on the crew neck. You get a football. You get an Indiana Hoosiers snapback hat, and you get a pair of socks, as well as the Platinum Pass card. All of that going to be available coming up just a little bit later on. The launch going to be happening at 10 a.m. on Friday the 8th. So you want to get on Homefield's website or get on the Homefield app, download the Homefield app, and looking forward to seeing what else they come up with. They've got great boxes for a bunch of different schools, but Indiana was one of the first ones they announced. They announced a bunch more today. And of course, you can take advantage of the Back Home Network code HOME23, get 15% off your first order from Homefield Apparel. But I think this box is going to be one that a lot of people are going to want to take advantage of.
Agreed.
So, again, homefieldapparel.com. Be sure to follow them on the social medias as well. Instagram, TikTok, X. They're all over the place. They do a great job of telling the stories behind the different logos and marks and brands that they've got on the storefront. So, also, quick reminder, folks, we're on Substack, CrimsonCast.substack.com. It's free to sign up, get podcasts delivered right to your inbox. There's also a paid option if you'd like to help financially support the show, which we always greatly appreciate. So, all right, Scott, let's jump in and start talking about the Hoosiers. Let's talk first about where Indiana was ranked according to the coaches. We do not have the poll yet from the AP, which I'm sure that will be completely fair and unbiased on the part of a lot of the people that voted in that thing. But the first coaches poll is out, and this might have been one that coaches even voted in as opposed to letting their sports information directors do it. But Indiana is ranked. They're ranked 19th in the coaches poll. And just for comparison purposes, Texas is number 1, Ohio State's number 2, Penn State's number 3, Georgia's number 4, Notre Dame's number 5, and then Clemson got 2 first-place votes. They're number 6. Other Big Ten teams in the mix, Oregon is 7th in this poll. Illinois is 12th. Michigan's 14th. Indiana's the next ranked Big Ten team and the last ranked Big Ten team out of the top 25. Scott, I'm curious first to get your reaction to where this Hoosiers team landed in this initial coaches poll.
It's kind of exactly where I expected it to be. I mean, let's take a moment. We're ranked before the season starts. I mean, this doesn't happen very often. I think only 2 times since you and I have been doing the podcast. So, we're in the top 20. That's a very cool, nice thing. Yeah. I mean, but that's kind of what I initially thought was like, this is kind of where I thought, I was worried we were going to, not worried, but just, I was kind of thinking we might get put in that 23, 24, 25 spot, or even, like first or second to receiving votes. But no, we're in a good spot. The great thing here is, barring any kind of a massive problem, we're going to go into that Illinois game ranked. They should be ranked as well. Unlike the last time we were ranked, a couple years ago, I think we were like 14th or 15th. We play Iowa first game.
16th, I think is what it was. Yeah.
And then it's like we lose. Then it's like, all right, well, that was it. Like, and then we just start going underwater and it's like we're Jack from Titanic. Like, I still see the boat. We're not there anymore. We're no longer close. So like, we'll be able to stay ranked for a couple of weeks. A couple teams might fall ahead of us.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And, based on those are my overall thoughts. I'll take a breath and let you go.
It's funny you mentioned that 2021 season. Yeah, Indiana started 16th, dropped out of the poll. At least Iowa got credit for beating them early because Iowa jumped 8 spots that year in the AP poll after beating Indiana in that first game. And that probably shouldn't have happened. As we saw,
you beat a 2-10 team. Way to go!
Yeah. How could we know at the time? Which is, of course, why preseason polls are stupid unless your team is in them.
Right.
And in this case,
I was say it's such a big deal. Like you talked about one of your other pods. Like the fact that we are ranked just gets you comment the entire year. Because then later in the year, it's like, well, this team started the year ranked. It's like based on what?
Well, right, and it's like trying to get invited to the dance versus being invited to the dance. Because when you're invited to the dance, you're already in the dance. No one has to let you in. And if you recall last year, it took a while for Indiana to break in, and then it took a while beyond that for Indiana to actually be approved enough to get in the realm of the top 10. I mean, Indiana didn't make either poll last year until week 6 when they were 5-0. Right. And even at that point, in the coaches poll, they were 24th. In the AP poll, they were 23rd. And, week 7, they win. They jumped 5 spots to 18th in the AP poll. Week 8 at 6-0, they're 16th in the poll. Week 9, they get to 13th in the poll, and they're 7-0. But there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams with one loss above them in that mix. And so it really makes all the difference in the minds of voters. It shouldn't, but it does. If you start ranked and then you win, then the thought process, the psychology appears to be, well, that justifies their ranking. If you're not ranked, you have to do a ton of winning to even get to the point where the voters are like, I should rank this team. And if you lose a game, but you're ranked, if you start ranked, you lose a game, you're probably not going to fall out of the poll unless you do what Indiana did in 2021 and look like you don't belong on the field.
Right.
Which again is why I understand where the genesis of some of the criticisms of the IU scheduling come from. But the idea of we're going to start ranked and we're going to go 3-0 in the non-conference before we play our first conference game makes a big difference in terms of your longevity, because a 3-0 team losing a game is probably not going to get bounced out of the poll unless they're at the very tail end of it. Whereas a 1-1 team with that loss after week 2, you probably are going to get bounced out. So again, for where Indiana wants to be, which is a contending team for the playoff, this is what you need in order to really effectively do that and set yourself up. And I agree in terms of like where Indiana is set up. I went in thinking that they probably had a high water mark of about 12 or 13 and a low water mark of 23 or 24. So landing 19th was almost right smack dab in the middle of that. Yeah. I think they should probably be ranked higher, but this is where the polls, they give a lot of benefit to name brand teams. Like there's really no reason why Michigan should be 14th starting a freshman quarterback. There's no reason why Florida and Tennessee should be ranked ahead of Indiana, or Ole Miss should be ranked ahead of Indiana, but those are SEC teams. They also get benefit of the doubt. So given all of that, I think Indiana's in a pretty good spot to get things started. 19th is perfectly acceptable. As you said, it's top 20. That sets them up nicely for what they want to do.
I also love, it's so funny as you're going through that like that, but yet Illinois is not really a name brand team and they get 12. I love Illinois at 12. Because to me, I'm looking at that as like, all right, well, that's our position to take in 4 weeks once the season starts. Because I think, we'll get to our season preview. I think that's a very winnable game. I think we can beat Illinois. So I just look at that as like, all right, you guys just keep 12, 11, and 10 spots warm for us because we're coming to take that in a couple of weeks. So I love seeing Illinois in that spot. And let's just it gives Cignetti and the team a little more juice for that game. Not that they needed it.
Well, and that's assuming Illinois just stays at 12. If Illinois wins at Duke and they go into that IU game 3-0, I bet they're a top 10 team, because I have a hard time seeing the whole top 10 staying static over the course of the first few weeks of the season. You've got some teams playing some tough games early on that they'll be likely to drop, at least like Texas and Ohio State. Probably both of those are going to stay in the top 10, but it wouldn't be shocking if a couple of other teams ended up dropping out. And so that sets up nicely if you're Indiana to get to host a top 10 team,
right?
Which you might be favored for. In fact, I think I saw something today where Indiana right now is, I think, a -2.5 point favorite in early betting lines against Illinois. Now, that's obviously very early. That'll change, but that's the kind of thing that helps you to build your own resume. And
until we beat them and they suck, because you know how it goes. Like, then once we beat them, it's like, well, then they won't be a good team anymore.
But see, I don't think that happens. See, last year,
I know. I'm just
no. It's a good point, but it's one of those things where it's like last year, they wanted to give a lot of credence to Nebraska and then they couldn't, and they wanted to give a lot of credence to Washington and they couldn't. Everybody, I think Illinois is going to be a contender for a playoff spot this year all season. So the chances of that scenario that you just described happening are lower. It was a funny bit last year, but I think it's a different setup this year because I do think the Big Ten is a bit stronger.
But I think it puts us in a good spot where if, we beat Illinois, and then if you're able to split those Iowa-Oregon games or even lose both of them, I don't think you're at a point where you lose touch with the top 25. Like, right. If you beat Illinois and then you lose at Iowa and then you lose at Oregon, you're probably back to the back half of the top 25 or maybe in others receiving votes, but you'll still be there. And then you have a Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland trifecta where you might be able to, notch your way back up, and then you're there for Penn State. So it breaks in a nice way where I could see us being ranked for most of the season, even if we don't get through the season clean.
And look, I think this is one of those years where nobody gets out clean in the regular season. I really don't see a scenario right now. And Matt Blaska and I on Football Weather did our breakdowns of the SEC, did our breakdowns of the Big Ten. It's a tough road for everybody.
Well, it's something you talked about in your Q&A. People talking, the idea of like 10-2 could get to the Big Ten title. And you're like, well, but what about Oregon? What about Ohio State? It's like they all play each other. Like Ohio State plays Oregon, like Oregon plays Penn State. It's almost impossible for anyone to go clean because they all have to play each other. And so there's going to be a team with at least 1 or 2 losses. So I agree that 10-2 could get you to the Big Ten title.
Now, despite all of that, what we still deal with a pretty significant amount of, I would say, IU doubting is too nice of a way to put this. So there was an article written by an ESPN writer, we'll just keep it at that to start with, that got released on the 1st of August. We haven't talked about this yet because we had a lot of questions from the audience we wanted to hit that didn't have to do with this. But our old buddy Heather Dinich, who, of course, went to school at IU same time that you and I did, wrote a piece in ESPN, CFP 2025, 32 teams that can make the college football playoff. I'm going to share it here on screen for those who are.
I'm excited to see what they say about Indiana because there's 25 ranked teams.
Yeah, there's 25 ranked teams.
This is more than the number of ranked teams.
Really, there are 19 teams ranked in the top 19 of the coaches poll. I think my math is right there.
Right.
So yes, I'm fast. So we're scrolling through. We got Texas, we got Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, sure. Oregon, yeah. Clemson, okay. And Miami, Notre Dame, Let's see. Keep going. So, okay, Tennessee, who doesn't have a quarterback's at 10th. Well, that's interesting.
We should be. Well, they're ranked 18th, and we're ranked. So we should be coming up.
Texas A&M.
They're ranked 21st.
He's ranked 21st. Oh, Indiana's got to be right around the corner. Ole Miss, okay, fine. LSU, a little low. Michigan, but Boise State, 25th.
Okay, well, we're all right. I get it.
Tulane, who's not ranked. Well, that's odd.
They're fun to play in NCAA football. They have a lot of jerseys.
Kansas State, Auburn, 5-7 Auburn from last year.
Yeah, I'm looking for where they're ranked. Oh, there are other receiving votes. Okay, we should be just coming up.
UNLV, who lost their coach, has Dan Mullen, I think, as head coach now. Okay, SMU, USC, not ranked. South Carolina, Oklahoma, Arizona State, Florida. Kansas, BYU, Virginia Tech, Baylor, Nebraska. No, did you see Nebraska in the poll, Scott?
I didn't. I didn't, but they'll be good, I'm sure, when they're 5-0.
Christian and Texas Tech. No Indiana.
No Illinois either. Like, by the way, Illinois should be pissed. They're ranked 12th.
Right. So you've got a couple of things here. This got a lot of vibes, negative vibes in general.
Was every SEC team in there? Just
pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't think Vanderbilt was in there. I'd have to go back and check. And I think maybe Kentucky missed the boat, but it felt like everybody else was in there. But first of all, I don't know how look, we're Indiana partisans, no question. But as you mentioned, Illinois has a lot of reason to be aggrieved given their schedule, given the talent they've got coming back, given where they're ranked. They're not in this top 32. This is the kind of thing that if one were to make an argument that there is some strong thumbs being put on the scales of the national framing of college football, and of the perception of Big Ten teams versus SEC teams, this is where you might look and point to it as evidence that doesn't seem like a completely that list seems disingenuous, Scott. Let's put it that way. That list seems like a list that was designed to generate a lot of negative feedback and attention for clicks and for focus, but also to frame the idea that, well, gosh, there are just some Big Ten teams that are not in the mix for the playoff, even though they clearly are when you look at anything, whether it's returning talent or overall power projection or scheduling. And also when you're throwing a team like Nebraska in, who, is it possible Nebraska puts together a 10 or 11 win season? I guess, but it is a slap in the face to the rest of the conference, essentially on purpose. Like, oh, that's who we're going to put up there, but we're going to leave two teams that are in the top 20 out of this supposed ranking of teams that can make the college football playoff. I just think of it as comical, because for all the talk last year about how ESPN was driving this narrative against teams like Indiana, and not just teams like Indiana specifically, it's just like they're back on their BS once again at the beginning of the year, except it feels like a lot more people are aware of it at this point. And when this came out, it wasn't just Indiana fans that were like, what the heck is this? It was a lot of people in the college football landscape who immediately noticed that there were some discrepancies if you were actually putting together a legitimate evaluation of college football and the teams that have the best chance of getting in the playoff.
Because you also sent me the FanDuel has a list of the percentages of Big Ten teams making the playoffs. Ohio State's up there, Oregon's up there, but Iowa has a 25% chance of making it. They were not on this list. Washington has a 24% chance of making it. They were not on this list. Nebraska, 10% chance they're on this list. This goes back to something, you and I have talked about, you just talked about in one of your Q&As, about how college football is just an old boys club, and it's all the same kind of power names that you're pulling it up. Yeah, the chance of making the playoffs. You put in Nebraska in there because they're a name program,
right?
And look, I get it. Like, I'm, benefit of the doubt. I'm not writing for ESPN. That there does come a point where it's like, it's no fun to be like, all right, here are the top 10 teams that I see it, and you just give the top 10 teams that are like in the top 10. It's like, all right, you have to have some kind of angle, but the way that article was written, where it's like, we're going to look at the percentages of teams' ability to make it, and we're going to look at the top 32 teams. You have to do the top 32 teams based on percentages, or frame it as like, hey, and then I'm going to throw in, here's five teams that are off the radar, I think have a chance to make it. That's where you put Nebraska.
Right.
And so like, not every list has to be just, here's the top 25, and I'm going to list the top 25 and tell you what I think of each one. You can have different thoughts, but yeah, when you're leaving Iowa, Washington, Illinois, and Indiana out, and then putting Nebraska in, it reeks of like just Big Ten anti-bias, but also just, we're going to do big name bias, and we're just going to go after the teams that, that was a list of just, who's kind of good in college. If you ask somebody who doesn't pay attention to college football, list me 32 college football teams, you'd probably get a lot of those names.
Right. It's pretty fascinating. At this point, this is what you're going to get. And this is how Indiana in particular, I think, is going to get treated. And everybody is aware of that. And it's just fascinating that the way that ESPN seems to be approaching this is like, well, we don't care. We're just going to go about it this way. And even if you think about the reaction to Curt Cignetti and what he said at Big Ten Football Media Days, and the way that, and this is not just something like limited to ESPN, The Athletic like Stuart Mandel, several other people there, like have flipped out on this scheduling thing. Like the Big Ten is committing some kind of crime against college football while essentially ignoring the scheduling realities of the SEC. That's another flavor of this exact same syndrome. And it's fascinating to me because it's like at some point, I'd like maybe just a modicum of self-awareness to enter into the writing or the discussion around these things. But so much of the discussion and the framing and the narrative is driven by the same talking points that you seem to hear every week on the Feinbaum show. And that's great for the SEC, but it's not necessarily in any way accurate, nor does it feel like it's necessarily great for college football as a whole. If that's what you keep coming back to, you're just ignoring, like statistically speaking, the teams that actually do have a better than 15 to 20% chance of making the college football playoff.
The other piece of this that bugs me that I'm sure is going to happen this year with Indiana, it happened last year, was people would say, nationally, like, all right, well, Indiana's had a run. Like, let's see how they do against Ohio State. It's like, how is that our bar? Like, how is our bar? We got to win at Ohio State. And this year, I can see the same thing happening. If we win all of our games, but we lose at Oregon and we lose at Penn State, it's going to be like, look, I told you, man, they can't compete at the highest level. When I would say, let's look at Penn State. Like, Penn State has not won a top 10 game in 7 or 8 years. Nobody looks at Penn State as some kind of fraud. It's like, oh, they're a really good team who just has a hard time. But they're in the exact same boat. And it's like, I just don't think it's fair to say, well, like, you can't win at Penn State or at Oregon. Like, you're not really worthy of that. It's like, that's a really high bar to climb that most teams don't beat. Like, Penn State has never crossed that bar in the Franklin era. And I'm not saying that they should be in the playoff. Like, they should have been. Like, that's going to also annoy me this year is if we lose at Oregon, it'll be like, all right, well, we told you IU's not good. It's like a lot of teams are going to lose at Oregon. Like, Penn State will probably lose at Oregon if they play there this year.
Yeah, it's one of the one of the very weird things about college football is when teams are evaluated, like you said, there's a sliding scale about who actually gets the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't. But there's also this oddity where, so Indiana losing at Ohio State last year. Ohio State won that game fair and square. They were clearly the better team. Indiana did not rise to the occasion. But it was treated as like, well, Indiana just can't compete. It's like, that game was at Ohio Stadium. The number of Big Ten teams that have won at Ohio Stadium that aren't named Michigan is a pretty exclusive group of teams. I'm not saying you give Indiana a ton of credit for the way they played in that game, but to immediately discount them because they lost a game at Ohio Stadium feels like a weird way of going about it when, as we learned in the college football playoff this year, home field advantage means a ton. For all the talk about Tennessee and how good they were and how the SEC was they got spanked in the same stadium, I would argue more definitively than Indiana did. Where the games are played has to matter. And the nature of the sport is Indiana's only going to get to play Oregon at Oregon. At best, they might get to play them again in Lucas Oil Stadium for the Big Ten football championship, or in some weird bracketing thing that wouldn't actually happen. Maybe Indiana could go 11-1 and host Oregon in a playoff game. Seems unlikely. But that's it. Indiana gets one shot. It's on the road, and it's notoriously hard to win on the road in the Power Four. This is where I do get frustrated because one of the problems with the way college football gets covered, I think, when you're trying to actually ascertain who the best teams are, is that so much of the coverage, particularly the written coverage, is narrative driven, not necessarily quality driven, not statistically driven. It's why I enjoy Bill Connolly's stuff so much, because he has an algorithm. He plugs things into the algorithm. It evaluates the relative strength of the teams and their performance against what the model expected when the game started. Not, well, that team looked really good, so they're clearly better than that other team, even if the statistics and everything that happened under the hood don't tell us that was actually the case.
I'm just laughing because that's what ESPN hides on their site, but they put this stuff up. They put this stuff up front and center. You got to need like a PhD to figure out where Conley is on ESPN.
it just poisons the discourse in college football so much because it's so narrative driven. And I'm not saying narrative has no place, but what I am saying is that you can't use narrative as a proxy for figuring out who the best teams are. You have to look at the numbers, and sometimes the numbers are actually more definitive than the narrative. But one of the things you have to take into account is home field advantage.
So college football stats only goes back to 2016. I was just looking through. Ohio State hasn't lost another Big Ten game since 2016. It's like they lost to Michigan. That was it.
Right.
And the number of losses at home, home Big Ten games. Home Big Ten games. There's none in the last 10 years. And their losses, like they lost in 2021 to Oregon, but Oregon was not in the Big Ten at that time. And they lost to Oklahoma. That's it. I mean, it's just like to say you have to beat. And by the way, Penn State is also pretty good at home as well. So like the idea that like this year we have to win at Oregon and we have to win at Penn State. I don't know why that's our bar to just show that we're competitive or good. Now, maybe that is the bar to get in the college football playoff. And I'm okay with that argument because college football playoff is, definitely the best of the best. And maybe we do need to win one of those games to get there. But it's going to be a sliding scale again, where it depends on what everybody else has done. Because if somebody else loses in Northern Illinois, like that is not the same as losing at Penn State.
Exactly. And, you look at the statistics historically, Big Ten teams have a big advantage at home. It's something like they win 18.2% more of their games than they lose at home. Michigan, for a 10-year period from 06 to 16, had a 26.8% advantage at home. They won 73.8% of their home games and 47% of their away games. It's just something that needs to be factored into this stuff. And I'm not saying that you should get credit for losing, but I think the idea that definitively this team is better than this other team simply because they beat them at home may not be the best way of going about figuring out who the best teams actually are.
Yeah.
Because it does matter on a neutral field. Like no one walked out of that, the Oregon Penn State game thinking that Penn State was the superior team to Oregon, and I think for good reason. But also nobody walked out of the Rose Bowl thinking that Oregon was a superior team to Ohio State because they had a shot on a neutral field and you saw what happened there. So some things to think about as we move forward with all of this. Anything else on the rankings, Scott? When I look at the rankings overall and you think about where Indiana's placed, they've got to play the number 3 team in the country on the road in this opening coaches poll. They got to play the number 7 team on the road. They have to play the number 12 team at home. And you figure that when you look at the also receiving votes, Iowa's in that mix. They do play Iowa. I think Iowa meters out to like 31st or something like that on this list. And, so it's a top heavy schedule, but they do play, 3 teams in the top 12. And I think that that's a pretty respectable thing. It's going to be fascinating to see how they maneuver through that schedule and also how consistent everybody is as we move through this season.
Yeah, no, it's they have a lot of opportunities to make some hay this year. And that was kind of the problem with last year's schedules. Other teams just didn't step up and be what we expected them to be. I don't think you're going to have a bad season out of Penn State and Oregon and Illinois. Like one of those 2 or 3 teams, 2 of those 3, if not all 3, are going to probably end the year ranked in the top 25. There's a world where, Penn State and Oregon play the week before Indiana plays Oregon. So, I doubt that Oregon could vault to number 1 if they win that game. But there's a world where if Penn State wins that game, they could be touching the doors of number 1. So you could be playing a number 1 ranked team in Happy Valley, which would be interesting. This is not related to the polls, but it is related to college football. You and I both play the college football video game. Last year, I played a bunch of simulations and a bunch of dynasties. I kept noticing like Curtis Rourke was getting Heisman votes in my dynasty, and like Indiana was ranked. I'm like, this is weird. Like why is that? Like it projected some of that. I will say this year, I'm in a dynasty already this year. Mendoza's getting Heisman votes, and Indiana is winning up to that Oregon game, and they're ranked like 9th in the country going to that Oregon game. I'll let you know how it finishes in the dynasty, but it just for what it's worth, when these games sim, Indiana's looking pretty good, and things are looking pretty good for Indiana in the NCAA football sim world.
I like that. I also wanted to note that Jay Horry in the Discord for Back Home Network posted some early lines, some early betting lines. I know not everybody gambles, but this is a good. I always tell people, even if you don't gamble,
Crimson Cash is coming back in like 2 weeks. We're doing a preview for the entire season.
If you haven't listened to Crimson Cash, great gambling advice and profitable. I mean, it really is profitable. And James has got the charts to prove it. But James Turner, Scott Caulfield, doing that every week, every Thursday. But I always tell people, even if you don't wager, the gambling lines are informative because they are a good measure of where Vegas thinks the betting on both sides will meet in the middle. So it's essentially kind of a wisdom of crowds proxy, which is helpful in terms of the perception of strike that may not necessarily meter out into what actually occurs in the game. But some of the lines that are up today on FanDuel, IU is a 23.5-point favorite against Old Dominion, which is the opening game of the year. They are a 2.5-point favorite on DraftKings against Illinois. And again, this is early lines. There'll be a lot of movement. They are a 14.5-point underdog at Oregon, and they are a 16.5-point underdog at Penn State. So
I like taking the 16.5 right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And we're going to get into the betting lines and the projections and all of that in a lot more detail as we get into our season preview, which isn't coming up for a little while. One of the things we always look at is FPI. The FPI stuff was really fascinating last year as it gave us a sense of like, well, gosh, how are these two teams projected against each other in terms of total strength? And it was fascinating during the season watching that move, and seeing what exactly the movement was looking like. And Indiana, of course, a big riser in a lot of ways versus what their original projections happen to be. So that's the kind of thing that we'll keep an eye on. And by the time we get ready for that first week of the season, we should have an idea of at least what the first few weeks of that look like and what FPI is looking like. FPI, for those who don't remember, is ESPN's projection, which the statistical model is pretty good on that. You just have to ignore all the other writing that goes along with it, basically.
Yeah. I haven't had time to do this breakdown, but I'm curious, like even just above us, Tennessee plays Georgia in week 3, which they could lose. It's kind of fun looking at like where teams could trip up and what the rankings, assuming both Illinois and Indiana are clean, what the rankings could be for that game. You'd be looking at, a top 10, 10 to 15 ranking like that. That's a high powered ranked game, the likes of which I'm not sure we've seen in Memorial Stadium before.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, the closest, I don't, I need to go back and look at that. I'm sure we've got the data somewhere.
Number one teams come in, but I'm not sure we've had us being also having a ranking at that level.
I agree. No, I did a rating, or I did a look through on that. I might be able to call it up here real quick of home games that Indiana's played historically and what the ratings or what the records were overall. Let me see if I can call this up real quick, because it is interesting looking through that historically and seeing where everything landed. But now that I look through it, I may not be able to find it very quickly, and I don't want to bore people. So, here we go. So the number, I'll say this, going back to 1981. Here's the total number of times that Indiana and their opponent have both been ranked in the top 25 at the same time. 1987, when Indiana hosted Michigan, Indiana was 15th and Michigan was 20th. And famously, Indiana won that game. That was the game where the rain shifted at the last second. And then Indiana won in the fourth quarter because everything shifted in their favor. And Scott, unless I missed one, that was the last time Indiana was ranked and an opponent was ranked in Memorial Stadium at the same time, at least in the AP poll. I don't believe I missed any since then. So,
yeah, you're looking at so Tennessee is playing Georgia on September 13th.
Yep.
Florida is playing LSU on September 13th. SMU is playing Baylor, which is in the top 32 of the Dinich poll. Just so they're a scary team. So I mean that's a tough game.
That's a third poll, the AP poll, the coaches poll, and the Dinich poll. I like
that. Ole Miss is playing Arkansas. They're playing them at home, so that probably they'll go clean to that point. Michigan, I mean, they have to go to Oklahoma on the 6th. That's not a total gimme game. So I'm just looking through. I guess South Carolina is the only other team between us and Illinois. South Carolina is at Virginia Tech. Not a complete walkover. There within there is 3 or 4. If 2 or 3 of those are really possible losses, and Indiana does well, I could see Indiana getting up to probably 16th, 15th, and if Illinois gets to 10, I mean that's 10 to 15. That is the highest ranked matchups of teams, in the modern history of Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. Well, keep an eye on it, obviously. But that's where things are at with the coaches poll. We'll obviously revisit with the AP when it comes out in a little bit. All right.
The last thing, I don't see any different. Like I see AP in the same range. I think I'd be shocked if we're anything higher than 17th in the AP.
I will say some people are releasing their ballots already. And we just saw one from Brandon Walker, who had Indiana 12th. So maybe it is a little bit higher. I don't know. It's really going to be fascinating to see.
Where do you have Illinois? Are we ahead? I'm just curious in that.
Let me grab that. I turned it off. Let me turn it back on again. He had Illinois 15th.
Okay.
So his poll had Nebraska 22nd, had Michigan 25th. Michigan's going to be an interesting one because I do think that they may be a really high variance team in terms of where they get voted in. But it's all over the place, and I think this is going to be an artifact of what happens with this season in college football. Everybody thinks Penn State's going to be really good, but Penn State's really going to hinge on their quarterback, and as we talked about on football weather, a lot of tough games that they have to play. Texas, everybody thinks Texas is going to be great. They got a really tough schedule. What happens with them? People think Clemson, and Clemson could go undefeated in the regular season just because they're in the ACC. Ohio State, they just won the national title. They're always good, but they're kind of starting fresh with a lot of things. So, LSU, a lot of people have ranked.
Does Ryan Day get fired?
I mean, if they lose to Michigan again, it's very possible. The game's in Ann Arbor this year, too.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those deals where I don't think anybody really knows anything for sure. I think Clemson's a really good bet to be, an undefeated team, even though they've got some tough games they got to play as well. But there's a lot of teams that may not deserve the rankings that they're getting. And I think that, Miami's a team with a big question mark. Florida's a team with a big question mark. Oklahoma's been ranked. I mean, this ranking has Oklahoma 16th. That's a big question mark. So there's just a lot of variance that I think we're going to see. And I'm really curious to see how it all meters out, because ultimately the rankings early may end up looking completely foolish by week 7 or 8, but I don't know how the pollsters are going to actually respond to that.
Yeah.
So anyway, before we wrap up, we did have a couple of questions from the last tranche of questions that we were answering. We had one question. I never know if it's Dave Under or Dav Under, but the question was, am I the only one with non-existent cell phone connectivity in Memorial Stadium, or is it just T-Mobile, or is it just the Northwest Lower Bowl? So I feel almost ashamed to say this, but I'm a Verizon user, and it may just be because I get to the tailgate lots real early, but I have not had cell phone problems. I can't send pictures or videos very easily, but I can text with people and send tweets no problem in the stadium, whereas I know people who are sitting next to me can't get service at all. What is your service like in Memorial Stadium?
It's spotty, and I'm AT&T. I'm not a huge fan of AT&T. I probably should switch to Verizon. It's the one. I'm very tech savvy. It's the one thing where I'm nervous of changing providers, because I know you can switch your phone number, but it's just it's one of those I'm just scared. What if it doesn't work right? So I've been so scared to change from AT&T to Verizon. Mine is spotty, but it's not great. I wish they would provide Wi-Fi in the stadium. It's so nice when I go to Gamebridge and a Pacers game, they just have a Wi-Fi setup, and it's nice. So that would be the request I would have for IU Memorial Stadium, is just get some hot spots and let's just go Wi-Fi.
Last question for this podcast. Michael Law asks, assuming the football program has continued success, what would be your and Scott's top 3 Memorial Stadium upgrades? No duplicates.
All right, so no Wi-Fi. So we already on the Wi-Fi.
Well, no. I think you can throw the Wi-Fi in as an upgrade. I think you can use that as one of yours. I
want to get something more fun. But
okay.
No between us, so we each have to have something different. Okay.
Right. We did not prepare. We never prepare for our podcast, folks. So, so do you have one off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'm going to be a dick and steal the one that I know you want. No. I have one that I think you want to do, so I don't want to steal it from you.
No, go ahead, steal it. I don't care.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I mean, if we're just continued success, I can't do this because it's your idea. No.
Do it.
Okay. I think that we should add. I'm completely stealing Galen's idea. I love the idea of adding an addition on the other side of the stadium, the non-press box side, to cover up Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
Or not cover up, but just like, so on that wide shot, you're not also looking at Assembly Hall. I think that's the place to do it. So that's where I would add an addition. I think you have the space and the land to have a nice areas where the students come in. It could be double-decker students. So I feel bad because I'm stealing this. This is totally your idea.
It's funny because I have an offshoot of that. I don't think you should add more seats, but I think you should add a double stacked luxury box setup.
Okay.
On that side of the stadium, on the east side of the stadium, because that would give you a solid 40 feet of additional height.
Yeah.
And I think if you did double stacked luxury boxes, even if it was only across like the middle 75% of the stand, you could even have a rooftop section on top of it for when it's nice, that you could open up as an event space that would overlook the entire stadium, but you could also see Assembly Hall in the background. That would be, for me, a different enough version of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
To me, it's like that's the natural spot to put something. Yeah. I honestly would love a more modern looking thing that ran across the entire east side of the stadium, including the curves. And I think in this era, you don't need more seats. What you do need is more revenue opportunities. And there's a big influx of interest in IU football. And there's always an interest in luxury boxes for corporate partners, for wealthy alums, for NIL, make goods and things like that. It just seems like such a no-brainer. And in an era where you're going to have to generate a lot of more revenue, not just for the NIL purposes on top, for extra things, but you're going to need to fill the hole in your budget for revenue sharing. That seems like a layup that Indiana could take advantage of. I'll also say, and Kurt Signetti even mentioned this in his press conference, knock the press box down and rebuild it. And again, I would make it less tall, significantly wider, which lowers the camera angle. And I think that's important because I think that makes the stadium itself look better. If you've never been up in the press box,
it's a wild view.
You look like you're looking straight down, but it's also, it looks fine on the inside, but it just doesn't look special at all. Yeah. And when Scott and I were in school and we're broadcasting for WIUS, we would have to go up to the 6th floor, and we were in one of those boxes, and it was always funny because like John Mellencamp's box was right on the left, and on the right side was the visiting athletic department box. Now, at some point, somebody was like, we could be making money off of these. So they kicked the student broadcasters out and put them on the roof, which they should, but you could build dedicated radio booths that aren't out in the quasi elements in this type of a setup because you'd have significantly more space. To me, that's a separate idea from the idea of doing the thing on the other side of the stadium, but feels like a layup and would fundamentally change the way that people viewed Memorial Stadium. I think it was, it might have been Taylor Lehman, I think it was Taylor, who likes the kind of throwback look of the press box, and I respect that. And there's a couple other people who feel that way, but the vast majority of people are like, it makes the stadium look like it was built in the 1950s, which it was. Right. And I do think that it's probably time for a facade change, but if you're going to do that, you might as well take full advantage of the opportunity to just restructure the entire thing there on top of the press box or on top of the stadium.
So my second one goes similar to when you and I were out at the Rose Bowl. between third and fourth quarter, they played California, and they basically had like the LED lights like go on and off. It was my understanding that I think Indiana was like on the fence of getting those and didn't get them the last time they redid the lights. So I would say this is kind of a two-part thing. I would love the lights to be able to kind of go on and off quickly, but I think it would be cool to have, in a couple more night games, but just overall, we're scoring more touchdowns. Let's have something cool for touchdowns. Like, it is really cool. They do it more in the NFL now. Like, when the Packers score a touchdown, they're playing a night game. It's like all the lights shut off. They go green and yellow for the Packers. Like, they do some pretty cool in-stadium stuff at night in the NFL for touchdown. And you're seeing it in college too, for night games. I think it would be cool to do that and have some kind of cool in-stadium experience for touchdowns. I know we fire a cannon and we do push-ups, which just seems like, again, a vestige from like an era where it's just like, hey, yeah, sure, ROTC, come on down. Like, you guys want to do that? Sure, you guys can do that. Like, hey, you want a big inflatable guy? Sure. Like, it's just like, whatever. It's people in the stadium. It would be cool to have something coordinated with the stadium that made sense for our university and our history. I don't know what it is, but I do know like having a pseudo light show ability would be cool. So I'm wrapping this all together in a stadium level touchdown celebration type thing.
So my second upgrade is it's a little bit of a stadium upgrade, but it's really an area upgrade. What I would like to do, I'm actually going to call up Google Maps here.
I get a grade? I want a reaction. Do I get a grade on my upgrade?
I like yours. I think it's great. I think it's a no-brainer. I think having visual things like that can get people excited, that feel cool. That's really the kind of thing obviously we need to play some night games to really take full advantage, which I think Indiana will have the chance to do. That's the one thing. It's like night games, especially Big Ten night games, are so rare. Now they're getting less rare, but how many night games has Indiana had that you could think of?
We have a lot of we're getting more 3:30 games where it gets dusk. Like the Michigan game was not a night game, but it turned into a night game.
That's fair. So here's what I want to do. So I'm going to call this up for those of you who are watching along. So what I'm looking,
we were preparing.
I did prepare. Hey, buddy, I'm doing this on the fly. Okay. I have the ability to form thoughts and come up with visual cues all at once. All right. So anyway, what you're seeing, and if you're on Apple, you're not seeing it, but what you're seeing on YouTube and Spotify is the Google Earth image of 17th Street immediately south of the stadium. So you can see like the plaza that leads into the south end zone facility. And then the edge of the tailgate area with that janky parking lot off of Fess. What I want to do is I want to build a 3 or 4 story row of restaurants and apartments with a sky bridge over Fee Lane that allows people who are in that commercial complex eating and drinking before the game to walk across Fee Lane, or that 17th Street Sky Bridge, not Fee Lane, 17th Street Sky Bridge, and drop down right into the plaza at the entrance to the south end zone facility. I think that whole area is just ripe for that kind of development. I think it would be great to have an actual stadium district. That seems like the perfect spot for it. You could even go across Fess and stretch it all the way so that it went from Indiana to Woodlawn. Yes, it would take some of the grass tailgate out, but I think that would be a worthwhile trade because, frankly, I would love that area to have more identity. And the problem, and this has always been a problem with Bloomington and the way that Bloomington and the campus kind of come together, it was never built with the idea of having a commercial district. And I think that a lot of the stadiums that we see now that have commercial districts, it's just such a great advantage because people can spend a lot of time there. It would also work great for basketball season, which is almost a bigger need to some degree, because you know how complicated it can be to go downtown and eat at 5, try to get up there for a 7 o'clock tip. So you could use this all year. It wouldn't just be a football thing, but it would essentially present right into the football complex.
I love it. Like no notes. I love the Sky Bridge idea. Well, because that's where they jammed game day this year, and it felt like this is a cool area, but like it didn't feel. I love all that. I think that's great.
Okay, we got a third one real quick.
Of course, yeah. You asked for 3. I have 3.
I did.
My third one, and maybe this, I honestly do not know. Maybe this is coming. I've found it interesting, that we go to the south end zone. They have a Tobias Nutrition Center. We go there during the games. But when we walk around back to our seats, there's a spot on the wall that shows all of the bowl games that Indiana has been in. That's the only place that I know publicly where we have a listing of our bowls. Now, on one hand, it's like, all right, it's not a lot up there and not a lot since, the 90s and not a lot of wins, but wins and loss up there. But it's like, we're going to have the college football playoff to put in. I think maybe this goes in conjunction with the bigger score, the bigger press box. A lot of schools have a press box with all the years listed. I think we need to make that more public in the bowl of the arena. I think it needs to happen this year where we have some place where we highlight all of the successes that we have had. Because now we have some recent successes, and it's like, yeah, we didn't win the Gator Bowl, we didn't win the Outback Bowl, but we were there. We're in the college football playoff. Like there should be some place to put that. I don't honestly know where to do it now, but I do think, that big scoreboard would be the spot. I'm going to do a 3A as well. I have 4. So I'm stealing one more.
Okay.
You go for your third, and then I do have a bonus one.
My third one is smaller, and it's only significant to a certain section of the population. Everybody, if you've been to IU football games as a tailgater, you know that the white lot and the orange lot have reserved spaces that you can purchase. I think they need to extend that to the green lot and the blue lot and let people purchase their spots. Because I think that the tailgate scene around IU football has always been legendary, and it's been essentially waiting for the team to catch up to it. Well, it's here now. And for those of us that have been tailgating for a while, it is a burden, frankly, to have to go there right when the gates open just to get the spot that everybody knows your tailgate's in. And I would pay additional money to be able to reserve that spot. And I think because if you go to the green lot, which is where we tailgate, it's the same people in the same spots, and everybody just has to get there like mega early. And I mean, I'll do it it's tough on the noon games where you got to get there at 8 a.m. I was there at 6 a.m. for the Washington game so I could get a spot for a game that kicked at noon, and whatever, it's fine. But man, you go longer than 4 hours. That's an endurance thing, but you have to do it if you want to get your spot. And there's literally no recourse other than ponying up a significant amount of money, which you don't even know the amount for. Like, this is one of my big complaints about the IU ticket office is I never know how much do I actually have to give in order to get an orange lot spot. And that just locks me into one when we have, well, you've been to my tailgate. We have like 100 people. I need like a couple of spots just to have enough room to get everybody in there and to do the cooking and whatever. So I think right now is the time, especially now since 4 season tickets only gets you 1 parking pass. Now's the time to maybe up the game a little bit. And especially I think with the blue lot, which is of course the one between 17th Street and Assembly, and the green lot, which is between Assembly and the Tennis Center, those seem like the most logical next places for that.
I don't know if I should do this publicly or not, but just kind of fun. Like we park in lot 9, I think, but it's like walking up where the practice field is to our left, and there's like flags all along the way. And we've had a spot on the edge. It's great, like a little bit of grass. I don't tailgate as much as you. I just have a little table, little grill, like me and the family. There's a flag there, and I talked to my guy at the varsity club. I'm like, hey, I'd love to can I put my name on? Like, I'd be curious. Can I like donate to get my name on that flag? And he's like, yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's interesting. Like, I thought it'd be like, yes, we'll sell whatever you want to sell. Anyway, it's just funny, like that whole idea of like still trying to figure out like I think your idea, it makes a lot of sense of like, hey, I want dedicated tailgating spots. I want to pay for it. My last stadium upgrade is hopefully they'll be doing this soon, but they put some suites down on the field level on the south side. I think making those more permanent, because right now those are great views, making those permanent. But I think using that area in a weird way, Memorial Stadium almost looks like one of those arenas that was built for both hockey and basketball, where you have this weird kind of area in the bottom behind the end zones, especially on the north side. It's like there's risers almost as it like with that the ROTC is on, which is almost like a reminder of the old Memorial Stadium where the end zones were just risers. I would like to see that area filled in with something a little more game-like. Maybe you have students down there, or I understand it's close to the field, so you don't want to run into people running into each other, but it feels like very wasted space, and I feel like you could make those much more permanent, either suites or something.
I think that they will. I know. I'll tell you one thing they are doing. They've added more suites to the rooftop at the Rock section,
right?
Which I will always lament because I had my season tickets in the rooftop.
You liked it there.
I loved it there. It was great. I had to move. Well, they moved it. They changed it into a private event space, and now they're adding suites. And I think that's fine. That's great. Whatever. I'm not bitter. Right. It was jarring last year because I got used to that location for games. But then I moved, and now I'm in the northwest corner, relatively close to the field. And I love those seats. So I'm not complaining. But they are adding more suites up at that level. Obviously, you've got the Tobias suites below that. You've got the field suites below that. They are it's amazing for those of us who have been around going to Memorial Stadium since the 80s. And I know many in our audience have been going longer than that. They have squeezed a lot of monetization into areas I never would have predicted. And so I think IU deserves a lot of credit. We're not bashing on IU.
Growing up, those were hills people just rolled down.
I know. It's not.
Great games.
If you go back and find a copy of NCAA 2006, the video game, right, and you'll still see there's no north end zone, there's no south end zone. It's like, what the hell? Like, what? Well, this is the stadium that we've had that was the stadium forever. And
you look at like the Rose Bowl team, they're on bleachers. Like those were the bleachers in the north end zone. Like that was like 6 rows of bleachers.
Yeah,
that was it.
So anyway, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I'm going to ask you this because you and I have not talked marketing yet. I'm just like back to my second point. Do you think there will be something inside the stadium for game 1 recognizing the college football playoff?
Probably, yes.
Okay. I hope so too. I just don't know where. But I hope so, and I hope for all the other bowls too. But it'd be cool to see something there.
Lot to look forward to. And we'll be talking about it all here on CrimsonCast and the Back Home Network. So for Scott, I'm Galen. We'll wrap this up for today. And we'll be back with more coming up soon as we'll continue to answer your questions about the team. We'll have our own previews coming up here in the next couple of weeks and a very special announcement coming very soon that I think most of you are going to want to hear. Catch you folks on the flip side. Stay never daunted. So long, everybody.